Thanks, everybody, and welcome back to the annual general meeting for 2021. We appreciate you either joining us in person, as many of you are, or watching the videos post facto. Our next item is the report from the Chapter Advisory Council Steering Committee. And Pierre-Jean Terres, I guess you're going to be leading that. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Take it away.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Kevin, too, for the introduction. I guess, Kevin, you might share the excellent.
Oops, sorry. Yes, just tell me when you'd like to advance the slides.
Sure, no problem. So first, thanks. Hello, everyone. First, and thank you for having me today with you. I'll as it's the case once or twice a year, I'll just quickly recap what's the Chapter Advisory Council, why we're here for, and what we're working on. I'll try to keep that as short as possible, not to take too much of your time. I know you have a busy schedule today, so let's start. You can move to the next one. Quick, as I mentioned, a quick recap on what's the CHAC, SC. How do we work to develop advice and recommendations, and what we are working on, or what we just worked on lately. Forgot to ask, but can you hear me well first, perhaps? Yes.
Yes.
Great. So next slide, please. So basic recap for some of you already know what's the Chapter Advisory Council. Perhaps some of you do not really know what we're here for and what we're doing. Basically, the Chapter Advisory Council is the voice of the chapters. So it gathers all the chapters, all the ISOC chapters around the world that nominate one representative. So each chapter has the choice to nominate the person on the Chapter Advisory Council. And the idea behind that is to have a local to global approach. So chapters through this council might bring up topics and concerns about ISOC, be it process, be it decisions, and so on. So the steering committee, which I will talk afterwards, can interact with the board and emit advice recommendations on those topics. So the idea is to take from the field and bring it up to the Board of Trustees, to the CEO, and to work with the staff throughout the year to help clear some topics and some concerns. Each representative has also the opportunity to bring topics, so it's not only the chapter, one individual chapter. I mean, it can be several chapters having one common concerns, of course. Usually we meet 3 times a year. Last one was on June 22nd, and we also have the Chapter Advisory Council Steering Committee, which I'm going to quickly introduce. Next slide, please. So the Steering Committee is from the representatives of the Advisory Council. It's elected once a year. Next elections will be held on Q4 of the coming year for the Chapter Steering Committee of 2022. 9 members on it, representing all the regions and the chapters. So 6 representatives are elected for a geographic reason, meaning we have one for Asia Pacific, one for Middle East, for instance, and then the 3 others are non-geographicals, but still elected by the chapter's representatives. So everything democratic, and everything is public, so it's not like a small combination between people between the chapters. And the steering committee, before writing advice recommendations, depending on, of course, the target and the matter, will need the approval of the full Chapter Advisory Council before sending the advice to the board. So it's always something that all chapters give an update on, or give comments or give ideas on what we're working, to make sure that we have some sort of consensus always on the topic in the matter. We also interact, as I mentioned, as the steering committee with the staff. This year we worked quite a lot with the staff on ongoing small matters with some chapters. And next slide, please. So quickly, all of this information, if you want all the information about the members is available on the website. So I won't go through each one, but you can see here the 6th region: Africa, Asia Pacific, Latin America and Caribbean, Middle East, Europe region, and the North American region, plus the 3 non-geographical. Next slide, please. So how do we work to develop an advice? Usually, as I mentioned, the community, so chapters or individuals, bring a concern to the steering committee, either to the regional representative or to directly the staff or to the full list of members. And then the chapter steering committee was probably, as any board or any advisory council works, or meeting works, will set up a small committee to work on the topic, and then to draft a recommendation or an advice that we will send to the board or to the appropriate working group, let's say, in order to have, let's say, a back and forth and a work on how to improve or to settle a problem or a situation. And as I mentioned, the full CHAC is also consulted when there is anything involving the full advisory council. For instance, next slide, please. I will relate to this. So an example was the charter amendment. That was a work started last year. The advice was approved by the full CHAC, and then it was sent to the board, and the board approved that on a meeting on February 21. So once it's approved, then the charter of the chapter advisory council was updated, and everybody from the chapter advisory council had at the time to send comments. Now I'm going to quickly talk about what we are currently doing and what we will probably be doing in the coming weeks, month. Rules and lately, after the chapter advisory council charter amendment, we went to step 2 with a committee led by our member Herman from actually is a non-geographical, but is from South America. We went to revise the rules and procedures amendment of the chapter advisory council, because after a few years it needed a few updates and few upgrades. So this was approved by internally. This one is something internal to the CHAC functioning and to the CHAC SC. So this was approved during our last meeting on July 20th. It will be, if not yet, it will be soon available on the website. So always something transparent and public, of course. Other topics we're working on for the past year. Some topics started last year. Some started with the beginning of this new 2021 year. Opt-in, opt-out. Many chapters did have concern about how to communicate with their own members, and their members having the right to opt out to receive communications. So many chapters had problems about that. This led to discussions. This topic is on the table for quite a while. And this led to discussion and brought up a new data privacy program that perhaps you've seen emails and consultations go through. The consultation ended on July 16, if I recall correctly. Yeah, July 16, and there will be new agreement with the chapters, so they might be able to communicate with members and access their members when they need to send them news about events or whatsoever. Another problem still within communication, it's about how do we communicate between chapters when we have something to announce or to say Currently, we have lots of mailing lists, lots of various groups, but sometimes it's not so efficient. So we're working on how we could improve that and how we can help chapters to be aware of what's going on and not miss the information and avoid misunderstandings in some situation. Another topic that we just kind of ended up working on was with the staff about how to handle multiple chapters per country, which is the case for some countries, not all. But depending on the situation locally, it might be good to have, we thought it might be good to have several chapters per country, which already exists for some countries I mentioned, but it was kind of an informal process from time to time. Now the SC issued a recommendation or advice to the staff on how to handle that. And this will be publicly, I think, added to the website in the coming weeks too. So it's something we just ended up working on. And finally, we are also working on access for some chapters who have trouble accessing funds, be it on the legal part or not. So we're trying to find a solution and from time to time see what's coming from other institutions or other organizations globally to solve this problem. And I'll end up, of course, I know you had a quick session on governance reform. So we'll also keep following the discussion and be involved in the coming weeks and months on this topic. So we'll probably, I guess, have more news in the coming weeks on this topic. And I try to keep that short, so I'll be happy to answer your questions directly if you have on the Chapter Advisory Council, on the steering committee, or on the work we're doing or we plan to do.
Thanks very much for the report. Luis?
Thank you, Pierre-Jean. Sorry about the video, but I'm having bandwidth issues. One of the issues I was expecting to see in the report is about the member NOVA, which seems to be a concern to everybody around ISOC, but I don't see it on the CHACS report. So that means that it is not relevant at the chapter advisory level, or is just not in the agenda, or where is it coming? Because everybody's providing a lot of input to improve that, and the staff is doing a lot of work, and I don't see it in the report. Also, you told us that these issues that you are discussing from the last meeting, especially the multiple chapters per country and the question regarding the funds to the chapters, is an ongoing work. But when do you think the results are ready to be presented and discussed? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So for the first part about the member NOVA topic, as I could have stated in the beginning, I didn't put everything in the presentation because I just didn't want to have it too long. But of course, we're working on the AMS topic. There is a working group on the AMS requirement, and so do we do for the SIG topic review. I guess you might have heard that the special interest group structure is changing actually, and there is a work ongoing. So those are topics we are dealing with, and we are keeping up on that part. So member NOVA, I'm not sure if you have discussed that yet, but there will be some thoughts and some modifications to come. There have been already few modifications to the member NOVA part in the past month, some functionalities. Of course, it's not perfect. We know that, and it's kind of related with the problem of communicating for chapters with their own members and dealing with their own mailing list and own contact and data privacy. For the other part of your question about the multiple chapters and so on, as I mentioned, it's going to be, I guess it will be added on the website in the coming weeks. it's quite, we decided about that quite recently, so it was about 10 days ago. And I'll be happy to come to your next board meeting and present you the full recommendation we brought. Basically, multiple chapters is fine as long as there is no overlapping, no competition. Collaboration, of course, is encouraged, and as long as it's legal, of course, and it serves the ISOC mission. Hope this answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's see, George, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Pierre-Jean. Very informative. I noticed that much of your work concerns structure and process and governance, and that seems quite appropriate. But I detect the absence of substantive discussions, and I'm wondering if I'm misinterpreting the meaning, the purpose of the CHAC.
You mean on the on substance, like the mission of ISOC?
No, well, I mean, on things that like manners, for example, and the kind of encryption issues that chapters are doing that may not have necessarily inter-chapter existence, but chapters would like to inform others of what's going on. Is there any of that there, or is that a function that's handled in a different way?
Actually, today the Chapter Advisory Council itself doesn't really have the mission or the mandate to give advice. I mean, or to organize events, for instance, or on the topic. This part will be more on the new SIG structure, and it's part of the work that has been ongoing with that. It's been creating structures that will be able to promote and to bring awareness to the community on topics. So these will be voted by the members and by the community itself. The role of the CHAC will rather be to, let's say there is a SIG topic on, let's say, encryption, because you mentioned that, on manners. The CHAC, if the matter is brought by a member or by the board, as I mentioned, we will be happy also to bring mandate or to take matters or concern brought by the board. So let's say for manners topic, if a chapters or has a problem with that, we will look into it and make an advice or a recommendation on how to deal with that structure. But on the substantive part itself, it's not necessarily the CHAC at work, and because it's the role of the chapters, and we do not want to bypass our mandate. But we're always happy to collaborate with the chapters. So.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for Pierre-Jean? Thank you once again for the report. We really
I think
appreciate
Maimuna raised hand. I don't know if that's a question or.
Maimuna, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I'm not able to raise my hand because I didn't have the. So I raise my hand. Thank you. I have a question about the participation level of chapters at the CHAC. I think on last year's report, it was one issue that I don't know what's going on now. It is better rate on participation or not? Thank you.
To date, it's quite stable. Indeed, that's a problem. That's a problem we're aware of and we deal with. Unfortunately, we're an advisory council, so we give advice and we work and we give advice, but we do not have an enforcement power, let's say. So it's always a bit less appealing for some people to get in. But the ISOC chapters are still involved in that. So even though they're not necessarily on each of the full meeting call, there are discussions privately in between chapters and their representatives. So it's kind of distributed. But yeah, to date, to my knowledge, there has never been a 100% attendance rate. And we do not necessarily expect that. But let's take the example of the charter amendment. So that was voted by the full CHAC before going to the board. we worked the chapter steering committee to get those votes, and that was also with the last year team, so led by Eduardo, who was the chair at that time. And there were efforts made, and we had a quite decent response rate with over 85 or 90%, if I recall correctly. So this means when we need the advice or when we need people to get in, they're here to follow us. I hope this answers your question. Maybe a bit long for a short answer. Is it's not perfect, but we're still having some involvement from chapters.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Okay, once again, thank you very much for the report, and we look forward to working with you throughout the rest of the year.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everyone, for having me. And as I mentioned, if you have any topics you would like us to work on or to work with you, let's feel free to send us a ping, and we'll work on that. And I just take the opportunity to thank also the ISOC staff. I see Joyce is there, and I don't see Kristen, but they're working with us a lot and helping quite a lot on our work. So just quick mention on that.
Thank you. So our next agenda item is to look at the different board focus areas, and Joyce, who Pierre-Jean just mentioned, is in fact our first speaker there, talking about community engagement, in particular with individual members.
Thank you, Ted. Let me just switch off. Okay, there we go. It's quite warm today here in Luxembourg, so I had some air flowing, but it was making noise. I will not take you through the presentation. I will assume I'm looking at the screen to see some notes that you all had an opportunity to look at the pre-recorded. I'm seeing notes. Excellent. Thank you. Pre-recorded presentation. Thank you to all of you who sent some questions in already. I hope I answered most of what you were asking. But I'm happy to have just a conversation, see if there's more feedback, and see if you need some additional information. So just very high level, the team has been working based on feedback from last year's boards. We've been working on revising the plan going forward with individual members, which is a presentation you saw. Based on last comments on today, then we will be working on operationalizing this plan going forward. So that is where we are.
Thank you very much. Are there questions at this point? So I actually have kind of a follow-up question to the exchange we already had. And that is, we were talking about how member journeys could be mapped out. And you described a little bit of the consultation of that. When you've actually come to create one or more of these member journeys, how are those then going to be shared back with the community so that they can confirm or maybe select which journey they think they're personally on, maybe associate that with their membership or something like that?
Thank you for that question, Ted. It's we actually, as I mentioned already in the emails, what we've seen is that the range of members, or types of members, I would say, or profiles, as we would call them, is quite varied within ISOC's membership. And so what we've done is, based on the initial survey that we sent out in January, we've worked in identifying two profiles, personas, that we think actually are quite widely represented across the membership. And so one is, we called it community builder, the other one is insider status. It's a bit of internal lingo to define some characteristics of those people, and that is what we actually use to then do the qualitative interviews, which are happening. I think the last ones were happening this week, actually. And so after that, we'll go into the analysis of the qualitative interviews to then map out what the needs are, the wants are of those people. We actually looking more at who they are, what they want, and what they're looking for, how they communicate, where they find information, rather than going into what do you think of ISOC. That was not the intent of the survey, of the research. It was really to get an understanding of who people are, what they're wanting, what they need, where they go for these things, and how they actually would expect to receive things from an organization like Internet Society. So once we've done the analysis, we'll share it back to the members. I mean, it's something that that we've done. We've shared the initial feedback as well. I don't know if you saw it in one of the member newsletters. We shared actually a summary of the initial survey as well. So I think that's one of the things we learned, is that people, when you ask something from the members, you also need to give something back, and that is definitely something that we'll be looking at.
Thank you much. We currently have George, Luis, and Richard in queue. George?
Yeah, thanks. Not a question, but a comment. I'm very pleased with the insightful analysis that that this work has shown, and I'm delighted that you're on this path. Look forward to good results. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Luis?
Yeah, thank you, Ted. Thank you, Joyce. You got well, some of the comments and questions that I made through the email, and also I appreciate very much the work you're doing towards improving this important part for ISOC. I should recommend a lot to take care about the statistical validity of the information you are collecting in order to get the or reduce the uncertainty of what we're analyzing. And the and thanks again.
Thank you, Luis. One of the things, and I understood from your email that was one of the things we needed to look at. What we've seen as well is that obviously the number of responses are not. We're not at a 50% response rate. I'm just overstating it of our membership. And so the validity is only as good as the data we have, obviously. Now, one of the things that we are putting in place is looking at what is the recurring research we need to do, and do we need to actually do an annual survey? Is it something, how can we do the learning and testing and then actually reiterating, so that we really refine one, the knowledge we get about our members, but also that we actually hopefully also can increase some of the response rates that we're looking at.
Thank you very much. Richard and Maimuna are in queue. Richard, I think you're first.
Thank you. So Joyce, I want to thank you again for this work. And second, what George said about its importance. One of the interesting things for me about this meeting was being able to watch all of the presentations together in one block and kind of compare them to each other. And it seems to me like this theme of engagement and meeting people where they are, and having these journeys is really kind of an important through-cutting thing that cuts through a bunch of the topics we've got here. So, whether that's, this individual membership lens, or how we develop and enrich organization members' experience, and kind of even into some of the revenue diversification concerns. So I wonder if you had thoughts on kind of whether that holistic, whether I was the one perceiving this, or whether there's actually some kind of motion of the organization in that general direction, kind of having a kind of unified vision of how individuals, chapters, organizations engage with the internet societies and organizations to create that broader society. I was thinking maybe some of I thought, as a particular instance of this, your insight about having the individual membership and the folks who work on that within ISOC being kind of a tool to the rest of the organization to accomplish the substantive things the internet society is trying to accomplish. So just curious on your thoughts on that kind of holistic view, and how we were kind of, any steps we're kind of on already to achieving that.
Thank you, Richard. I'm glad you noticed. It means that it's working, so it's good. So no, one of the things, I mean, with whether it's with the Marcom team, with the content team, with external engagement, community engagement in all the three segments, we've done a lot of work in actually making sure that we shift a little bit our narrative to look at what people want and how they want it, rather than how we think they want it, and how we think we should actually tell them. And we've seen a huge difference, I have to say, especially in the last year, where working with the projects is actually much more effective in that way. It's really a collaboration where when they have to send something out, or for example, I'll take an example on encryption. I mean, there's encryption, Global Encryption Day is in the mix, it's really a very close collaboration with our team to make sure that we look at how we reach the audience, what are the right channels, when would be a right time. If it's an individual, you have to have a different tone than if it's an organization member, because they would expect things in a different way. So we have these conversations with the rest of the teams as well. So again, I'm glad you noticed that it's a recurring theme. It's working. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The queue is currently Maimouna and then Andrew. Maimouna?
Thank you, Chair, and thank Joyce for the survey. I think it's important for ISOC to know, getting all the members, their engagement, and why they are there. And I have some questions from my chapter's members about some confusion they had when sometimes they talk with ISOC, sometimes we talk with chapters. I don't know how could you, work with the chapters to help them to get the feedback you got from their members, because some of the individuals are affiliated to a chapter. Do you have, the opportunity to also exchange with the chapters about, for example, the profile of their members, the expectation of the members, because you did the survey, so you have the data. The chapter does not have the data. How are you working with the chapter? Because I know you work with the chapter, but what way are you working with them to help them to know better their members and how their expectations are, and also to avoid any confusion between the activities of the chapters and the activities of ISOC, and they help them to understand that we are one organization and we have one goals, and even the activity are different. We are all working for the same goals. Thank you.
Merci, Maimouna. I think it's a very important question you're actually. We haven't shared the details of the survey back neither with the members or with the chapters, as the quantitative survey was one part of the research. So as I was mentioning, we're finalizing the qualitative, and so we are intending to share everything back with everybody involved, whether it's the members themselves, the chapters, and of course you, once we have the full research done, because the quantitative survey actually there were some gaps. I mean, because the number of respondents was close to 300, but it's very small compared to the overall membership population, and so it gives a snapshot, but it raised some questions as well, and so we actually integrated some of these questions in the quantitative, or we're trying to see if we can get some answers in the qualitative research that is happening now. As I said, we'll have to continue this reiteration going forward, so it has to be a test and learn going forwards, but sharing the results with the chapters will indeed be important, because yes, there is almost 50% overlap between global members and chapter members. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Andrew?
Thanks. So I wanted to pick up on something in Richard's comments, because like Joyce, I was pleased that Richard noticed, but it isn't only in respect of the communities that we engage with that this is a theme. So those of you, and this is primarily for the benefit of new trustees, but you'll remember that we actually did a reorganization of the staff. The purpose of that reorganization of the staff was literally in the service of that problem. The staff organization was sort of atomized into these little functions, and it was very difficult to get people to collaborate across the staff. So we changed the organization of the staff to try to make it easier that there was collaboration, so that different parts of the organization would naturally plug into different places. We have tried to pare down the things that we were paying attention to. When I did the job talk, so there's hardly anybody left here who remembers this, but when I initially interviewed with the board, one of the points that I made was that the website at the time had like I don't remember, 85 priorities or something on it. I mean, it was confusing. It was very difficult to get our message through, because when you're talking about everything, you're talking about nothing. And that has been the consistent theme that we've been trying to do. What is it that is our core topics? And then we focus on those things, and then we try to make sure that we coordinate with everybody who's interested in it. So this is a theme that you will continue to hear me bang on about. I think many of the staff get tired of me going on about, like, okay, but how does that affect this group or that group, and so on. Fortunately, I have a great team in the staff who are getting this and who are really embracing it and who are trying to work on it. And Joyce is and her whole team is one of the people who is a key to that. And so I really appreciate the fact that this theme is really echoing through, because it is the goal. It is the goal for us to speak as one society. We're not the internet bossy pants. We're not the internet staff. We're the internet society. And the goal is really to be a whole society altogether.
Thank you. I see Richard has his hand up for a follow-up.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up to +1. I appreciate the work. I observe that I think there's, as we mature this vision and as we have a more complete shareable thoughts on this, I think there's a community building opportunity to give people a picture that in which they can envision themselves in.
Luis?
Yes, thank you, Ted. Just a quick one. If after all these analysis you and your team are doing very nicely, do you think we can get closer to answer the question, what does it mean to the individual and the organization member to be part of ISOC? Thanks.
Thank you, Luis. And I think you're going towards what is the reasons for people to join? Is that where your question is heading to? Did I understand that correctly?
Well, to join and to remain. Yes, at the end it's a question of engagement. Yes, but there are a number of identified reasons why to join ISOC, and other reasons why to stay or leave. But I think all this information you're gathering is working towards defining better these two questions, right?
Yes, thank you, Luis. I got it now. It actually goes to within the presentation you saw that we identified 4 buckets of benefits, which is what came out of the research or of the survey in the beginning of the year, which is how we actually managed to bucket the benefits and actually give them a name and give them a definition. What we've seen with the org members as well, and when we talk to people, very often it is because they believe in what we do. It's actually the mission that really calls out. That is the reason for joining. The reason for staying is a little bit more challenging, which is where you have to actually bring in the benefits and then actually give them something that they care enough about to stay. I say it laughingly to the team. The Internet Society currently is like Hotel California. You can check out anytime you want, but you can never really leave. Once you sign on, because we don't have a renewal process right now, people just tend to stay in the database. And so it's very few people who actually ask to be removed and to actually leave the Internet Society, which gives us a little bit of a skewed vision of who our members are. Something that we're working on. So something we know is happening and we're working on fixing. There's a couple of other things that we need to fix first, but that's definitely one of the things. So the staying very often is wanting to be involved and wanting to make a difference, especially now after what we've seen in the last 18 months. The internet for many has a very different meaning than what it used to have. It's, as you've all seen, it was a lifeline. It still is a lifeline for many people. And that is the reason, being able to contribute to that is the reason why people often stay. I'll confirm when we get the results, but that's where we are today. That's really what comes out of it, whether from conversations or from the quantitative survey.
Thank you, and keep the good efforts on that.
Thank you, Luis.
Thank you, Joyce, very much for the report. We look forward to hearing the follow-ups as they come in September and after. And at this point, I think we are running a little bit behind, so we probably need to turn to our next, which is Sebastián, discussing ISOC's fellowship program redesign.
Yeah, thank you, Ted. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the new trustees, and congratulations to you, Ted, on your selection as a chairman. Excellent. So I hope it's again a conversation as Joyce has presented, and the idea is to present you. The last time we met with you as trustees, although there are many new trustees on the board now, we present you the idea of new fellowships that we were managing, then the plan to execute on the new fellowships, and now we are presenting you a fellowship, one of the 2 fellowships that we were planning that has begun being executed. So first, I would like to say thank you for your support, and the first fellowship, the Early Career Fellowship, has been launched back in. The first cohort started in late June. It has been going forward, and it's 1/4 of the fellowship already has passed. So we are in full motion in the new fellowships. As it was noted in the presentation, we are planning to launch a mid-career fellowship as well, and that is scheduled to be launched in 2022, and that also would include we are working now on the creation of the alumni program for the fellowships that we are running, so we can have a holistic view of all fellows that has been awarded by the Internet Society, and have a single approach to all of them and how we move forward after they exit our fellowship programs. So with that introduction, I would like to open the floor to comments and questions.
Thank you very much, Sebastián, for both reports and these opening remarks. I did want to follow up on our conversation in email to ask, as you go into the mid-career fellowship, and obviously this is a much more bespoke approach to engagement than the one you're currently doing with the early career. Is it possible that in that aspect of the fellowship program, there might be more of a focus on bringing in folks who are mid-career in government or civil service careers? Because it's obvious that one of the big themes that will be coming for the Internet Society over the next few years is how to engage with governments to teach them the Internet way of networking and to get them on board with continuing to support the Internet's evolution along the lines that have historically made it a success. Is the fellowship program targeting that at this point, or is it something where it might fall out depending on who applies, or how is that going to knit together?
We're still refining the approach, and we saw that drawback on the early career one, that we haven't had many governmental people applying to the fellowship, and we noted that. And that is a shortfall of the launch of the early career one. So we are now working on 2 things. I mean, we're working with the comms and content team in order to improve that focus and reach out to the right audience in order to overcome that. And also we are thinking, because we are in the middle of the development of the curricula for the mid-career, it's not yet completely defined. So we are tweaking that for making it more appealing to that sector. There is actually, in the demographics, I would say there is 2 things that I noted that are quite evident. One is, as you said, I mean, the lack of government officials applying to the fellowships, and the second one is a lack of Europeans also. If you notice in the regional dispersion of our fellows, there is none from Europe. So we are analyzing that data, and we are trying to refine our approach in order to cover those shortfalls.
Thank you. It looks like Luis is first in queue.
Thank you. Thank you, Sebastián, for the congratulations, and thank you for your good work on the fellowships. as also continuing with my discussion on the email, it's very clear the way you have designed the career path. You have this first cohort on one of the programs, the other is on their development, which is it looks promising. The focus on the gender, the focus on the geographical distribution, that is encouraging. This aspect you're talking now about the non-European participation, but I'm just wondering, what do you think after they finish? Yes, it's very clear that the path to get there, but then what happens then? How ISOC is benefiting from after they graduated. I was suggesting sort of a community that will keep making a critical mass to increase the number of fellowships. But what is your view? That's something I would like to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. And yeah, that's exactly so. We are also designing now an alumni program for all our fellows, not only including the early career and mid-career ones, but we also have the youth at IGF and the ITF policy guest as part of that. So we would like to have a comprehensive alumni program that is being designed as we speak. So we are going to present that in the near future. But the idea is exactly what you said. I mean, the idea is that how we put together all the resources that we have created and keep contributing to not only externally to expand our mission and vision as internet champions, but also internally, and that can be also be channeled into our own programs and projects, and to replicate also the creation of internet champions in our different empowerment programs and fellowships. So we are considering that, and we are working on an alumni program that will have a comprehensive view of all the fellowships related things that we're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks. I wanted to pick up on something that you, Ted, asked about, and Sebastian already said something about, but that is an important thing for new trustees to be aware of. So that's why I keep jumping in on these things. The goal of these fellowships is to make more of us, to make more of the Internet Society people. We want people who have the idea of the internet way. That is totally the goal. And so everything that the fellowships do, we're in the early period now, but everything that the fellowships do is really intended to build this community out and really to plant more professionals out in the world who have ideas that are similar to the way that we have about what the internet is like and how it should work and so on. So that was the explicit goal of the design of these programs. It's in the founding documents for this. And there will be challenges. One of them, of course, attracting government people. One of them attracting people from all geographies and so on. But I think that Sebastian and the whole team supporting him are actually making really huge progress on this. I think that this is, if I may say so, oodles better than the prior program, which was really primarily just travel stipends. And so I think there's a coherence to the approach that we're taking that I'm quite proud of, and I think the staff should be pleased that we've had the results that we have so far. That isn't to say it's done, but I do think that you should all keep in mind this idea that yes, the goal is in fact to make more Internet Society thinkers.
Thank you, Pepper.
Yeah, so I want to first, congratulate Sebastian and the program, and second what Andrew just said in terms of the purpose. It's oodles and oodles, way better than what we had. One of the programs that we did keep was the IETF Policy Fellows. I want to come back to that for a moment because that is designed for identifying, engaging government people, and they tend to be at the mid-career level, which is exactly where we want them, because they're going to be growing. And having been in government myself, the other types of fitting the fellowship program for government employees faces a lot of challenges sometimes. Legal approval, all kinds of difficulties that so any government participants that we can get, I think, is extremely important. But the way the IETF policy fellows are structured, that's relatively easy. And if I recall, we've been getting some really good applicants, and in fact, more applicants in the past when there was face-to-face meetings. And I think that's one thing that we maybe want to think about as a way to either structure a slightly different way to attract government or to leverage the IETF policy fellows, because that is about government and it's been very successful. The last thing, Sebastian, I really, really appreciate and think it's great, your comment about creating an alumni network, because that also reinforces Andrew's point. The extent to which we can create a cohort group with an alumni group and then connect people, right, who have been fellows at different times in different programs to allow them to create an alumni community, I think is extremely powerful if we can make it work. So I think that is, in terms of next steps, one of the most important things to do to really make this even more successful. But again, congratulations. So far, it's a work in progress, but enormously better than what we had before.
Yeah, thank you, Pepper. Yeah, sorry.
No, please go ahead, Sebastian.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pepper, for your words. And yes, I totally agree with that. So we are taking a lot of, taking some time to design the alumni program in the right way, because in our view is critical. Regarding the IETF policy guest program, I would like to highlight a comment that Andrew has put on the chat box. We're facing some challenges due to the online status of it. For, as you noted, for government officials to devote the time to attend online events, oftentimes happen that they have scheduled to attend your session in the next hour, but something more urgent and important just came up. The impossibility of flying them and having them in a different environment than the working environment they have, it's presenting some challenges. So we're analyzing both things. At the same time, the early career and the fellowships and the IETF, to understand better how we can overcome that challenge.
Completely agree with that, with the challenge and losing the advantage on the face-to-face in that circumstance. So that's something to think about going forward when people actually get back face-to-face.
Thank you very much. Laura?
Hi, thank you for the presentation, Sebastian. I'd also say, by the way, that I think the alumni program is a brilliant idea. I've seen this done very well actually with NOLS, which is the National Outdoor Leadership School in the United States. I'm an alumni there and they do a great job of this sort of continual outreach and keeping people in the fold for like 20 years afterwards. So highly encourage that sort of approach. My question was actually, the early career stuff looks amazing. Really, really happy with the program. I think it's as good a thing as I could possibly have imagined. What are you learning as you go through this cohort that you will apply to the mid-career fellowship? Is there anything that surprised you that will change the way that you approach that next program?
We haven't get to the point that we have conducted assessment. On this, because just 1/4 of the time of the cohort has passed already. So we haven't had the time to run not even a partial assessment, I would say. We are very happy on the way that it's running, and the other thing is that if you look at the career path of the fellowship, there is 4 modules, and we're finishing the first module, and the modules are very, I wouldn't say standalone, but they're very different to themselves. So we will have to analyze each of the modules separately, because they're serve a specific purpose. The first one is introducing to the internet topics in general, and the second one is about how to create networking. The third one is on building their own capacities. I mean, because we want not them only to be a champions on our issues, but for them to be effective. We think in the early career, we will need to build on capacities. So we are training them on presentations and project management and specific things for them to have the capacities in order to execute what they're learning in their fellowship. So in that sense, it's quite different from the mid-career, because we assume that the early career fellows are in a stage of their own development, or the career development, that they need that support that the mid-career ones are not going to need. So the two fellowships are going to be quite different, because the size of the cohort are going to be different. It's 15 for the early career, but only 8 because we want a more tailored program for the mid-career. The timing, I mean, it's going to be longer, the mid-career than the early career. It's going to be a different animal, I would say. So yes, there are going to be some learnings that we will apply. We're not there yet, and the animals are a bit different for them to compare. So I promise to give you an assessment in our next meeting. So I mean, I can be more precise on my answer for this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sebastian, and we really appreciate the report and the work you're doing. We look forward to hearing more both about how the early career fellowship and when it is put into practice, the mid-career fellowship goes. It's time now to turn to point 15C, which is the communications plan to strengthen the plan. We have Kirsty and James here. Kirsty, are you starting, or is it James?
I can lead us off. Thank you, Ted. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, and congratulations on your appointment. It's great to see some familiar faces, but also some new faces on the board as well. Chrissy and I were very happy to put the presentation together, and it's great that we've had some questions on email already. They may have sparked some other thoughts amongst the group, I'm not sure. So we're more than happy to try and answer any other questions you may have. But I would just say that it's been really very useful to listen to the conversation just here in this session, especially in relation to this theme of engagement that really is a kind of cross-cutting theme across many of the things we're doing. We're moving, I think, to a place where we're becoming intentionally much more audience-centric, and this has a lot to do with the engagement that Joyce is talking about. We really do want to understand what people want from us, how to deliver that, and meet people where they are, and that goes through Joyce's work, and we're working very closely with Joyce, both in the capacity of content and Marcom. Because really that is actually part of our communication strategy. Gathering that data and understanding what people need and how they want to receive it is a key part for our learning as an organization. So we're shifting there together as an organization across all of these different areas. And the same goes for Sebastian's work as well. We're making sure that we're delivering programs that offer value, and that where content and our use of channels is really a prerequisite to make those things successful. So everything is very much linked here, and it's really encouraging to hear that is very clearly understood.
Thank you very much. Kirsty, did you also want to make any comments before we turn to questions?
I think James did a fabulous job, but I will just say congratulations, Ted, and welcome to the new trustees. And it's a pleasure to be here and answer any more questions, or actually take any insight you have as well.
Thanks very much. And I did want to follow up slightly in the conversation that started in email, and kind of pick up on that to unfortunately not the internet bossy pants part of Andrew's previous comments, although that's by far the funniest part. But that is to think about how we do this as a society, and that the interchange we had made it very clear that what you guys were doing was putting together an organizational Marcom strategy. And I also reached out to Sarah, and she confirmed that she has independent activity going on there. And it seems like what we're missing perhaps is the up level. And this is a kind of a challenge, because as the internet society, we have all of these pieces which are independent. the metaphor that I've used with Andrew is it's like a family, right? Each individual family member has his or her or their own career. They have their own arc, their story that they're telling, their journey that they're on. But families also as a whole have an arc, and especially over generations have that arc. And to some degree, I think what we need to be able to tell is what the story is of the family, of the society. And that engagement, I think we don't have yet, or I haven't seen yet, either now or in previous iterations of this, because we keep talking about, well, there are 3 legs to a stool or 3 pillars to a, it's very mechanical, where I think what we're trying to figure out is how to tell the story of the society in terms of those calls to action. What is the call to action that unites all of these independent organizations? What is the journey that is common to that? And it's incredibly challenging to do that. And yet I feel like as we move into this next phase of where the core value of the internet is being challenged, if we don't do that, our effectiveness in bringing the message we need to bring out will be lower. And so I really wanted to kind of highlight to you and to Andrew that all families are happy in the same way, and all families are unhappy in unique ways. May be true. The unique ways in which we're all happy together are worth bringing out, even as we understand that each one of the elements of the society has unique challenges and unique journeys as well. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I can add a little bit of color there. Ted, I think my thoughts are totally in line with yours. I think part of what we want to fix going forward as an organization through the work that we're doing and that we're doing together with Joyce and the rest of the organization, including our project teams, is really to level up our story and to make sure that people do understand that we are an organization that cares about the internet, and that they have those journeys mapped out for them in the way that they want to follow. So they don't necessarily need to get involved in everything we do. They can choose their path, but that meta story, that big story, that connecting tissue that we talk about that connects everyone in our society is missing. And I think we need to focus on that. It's something that we've recognized, and we're working on some content deliverables there, and it's a message that we are pushing internally as well. So I think we've acknowledged it, and we intend to do more on that front.
Thank you. And I've been mispronouncing your name. Christy, do you have anything to add to that?
No worries there, Ted. I'm glad that you recognize it. I think that's sort of the evolution. Like we're turning that ship around, and I think it started with the with us focusing on core projects. It started with, Andrew turning the organization around. And so I think you're starting to see that manifest itself in a lot of places, right? And we're definitely feeling it in communications, the need to tell a more unified story. And so, we're moving there. I think as an organization as a whole, and in communications, we're really pushing that too. Right now we talk a lot about our mission. And then sometimes what we tend to do is jump right into our project levels. And so we really need to get to a point where we're talking about growing strong. And so we're going to get there. I call it a work in progress.
Thank you. It looks like Luis, you're first.
Thank you. Thank you, James and Christy. We had some follow-up on the email, and thank you very much for your answers. And I just want to let's say bring the importance of the content strategy, which is very promising. Yes, because now everything looks coherent, concise, and concrete, and all the C's, which I call the vitamin C. Yes, so it's really encouraging. The only thing that I am worried is about how we are tailoring the content to the different sort of communities. Yes, because then we have to look into audience. Yes, and from the Marcom, there are some audience measures and or metrics, and but on the content side, I don't see how we are segmenting the content to each of the audience, or we're thinking in a one for all content. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. Yeah, I really like your reference to the vitamin C's. I think that's it's a really nice way to think about it, because it's a beneficial way to think about what we're trying to do with content. But I would say that you know, audience is really important on two levels: in understanding what content to produce for who, from a content perspective, and also then for Christy and Marcom to understand how to get that content out to the right people in the right way. So audience is a really, really key consideration, and it goes to this cross-cutting theme that we've touched on about how we're moving to be a more audience-centric organization, and we are putting audience thinking first. And this is a change. You know, historically and traditionally, the Internet Society hasn't always prioritized insights or an understanding of what the audiences need, whereas with the strategy that we're adopting, we are putting that very much front and center, so that we are thinking about what we should be producing, who it's for, and what they need to hear, and how we should get it to them. And that's baked into the processes and the workflows that we have. So we are trying to be much more audience focused than we have been in the past. So this is all part of the fundamental shift that we're making.
I'll just add to that. You know, part of segmentation too comes in with, as I talked about in the presentation, doing some paid communications, and so that way we can get it to the right audience and the intended audience. And so part of the segmentation doesn't necessarily have to be in the content itself. It comes in the channels in which we use to deliver that content to the appropriate audience.
Laura?
Hello, thanks for the presentation. I really like being a lot more intentional about our communication strategy, and that's obviously a huge step forward. As per my questions on the mailing list, I would encourage you both to review the metrics that we use to evaluate things over time. I'm not a marketer, but I do have a lot of experience in designing metrics to drive the right behavior. And I do feel like this one might be a little bit off the mark. So good luck. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks, Laura.
Paul, you were in the queue before. Did you have a question?
Sure. We are obviously doing a lot of web metrics because that's very accessible, and actually the amount of information you get from engagement on a website is almost scary. But it's not the sole means by which we are communicating. So do we have some kind of strategy for how to get a better idea of what that audience engagement is in non-web media?
So each channel, as you know, Paul, offers its own metrics and how we can measure engagement. So you're absolutely right. We have one set of, or a lot that we can look at on the website. But then also, if you take a look at what we can measure on engagement for social media, and we're testing out new things on social media. For instance, as silly as it may sound, the use of emojis. I know this sounds silly, but these are some of our most engaged posts, and who would have thought? So we're testing new things to see if we can further our engagement on different channels. So would an emoji work on our website? Probably not, but it seems to work on social. So they all come with their own set of things that we can do in the channels, and we do test them, based on, well, it's not a channel I work on, but Joyce can attest to some of what we're seeing in the email to our chapters in our individuals. They're testing a more personalized approach. So yes, there's definitely things we are doing in the channels to test engagement. And I'm glad you're queuing on that, because it's really important. Having that audience-centric engagement first approach is very important as we move forward.
I think it's been a great change that I've seen in the last couple of years.
Thank you.
Mohammed?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just a quick comment, James and Christy. Thanks very much for this presentation and the answers that you just delivered. I really enjoyed the way ISOC has changed its communication methods. Over the last 5 years, I have seen its newsletters and other mail methods of deliveries. As a member, the method has really changed, and the new procedures, I really appreciate those. Just one quick comment. You may want to figure it out in your communication messages that you want to, you should, I would suggest, have your messages accessible for person with disabilities. It's not just because about the audience, that how much people do you have in the audience who may or may not have some sort of disability, but it's also good when it comes to some sort of search, as well as in the history on the internet, and search engine optimization as well. So just one example, and it's not just that I have observed it, people may have observed it as well. When the newsletter comes in our email, at the top there is the Internet Society's logo. And you have to do it once. You can write the logo of the Internet Society as a text transcription of the as the information into the information of the picture where it is placed in, so that the screen reader would recognize. It's not necessary that the text should be shown that it's the image or the logo of the Internet Society, but you can embed it in the how should I explain, in the backgrounds or in the communication channels where the computer knows it, but it's not shown on the screen. This would help in number one, saying Internet Society that we are accessible organization, and number two, when someone searches onto different search engines about these terms, this would help our messages pop up in the different searches as well. Thank you.
James,
yeah, Mohammed, thank you very much indeed for raising the issue of accessibility. I think the big message here is that we are working on improving the accessibility of our content and our communications in lots of different ways. We see this as a really, really important area that we want to do more in, to make sure that our content is more accessible. I mean, we believe that the internet is for everyone, so it follows that our content should be accessible to everyone. And you've highlighted some areas where we can make improvements. The reference you make to including an alt text with an image so that a screen reader can be used to understand what the image is. Another one would be instead of having an embedded link with a click here, you could actually explain what the link links to, whether it's the impact assessment toolkit or whether it's some other piece of content. You could actually explain what that is so it can be read as well. So we know that there are various things that we can do to improve accessibility. For instance, our websites were all designed with AA compliance in mind, but I think what has happened over time is that subsequent use has meant that some of those accessibility levels have gone down, so we need to bring them back up again. We've obviously got a whole accessibility section in our style guide, and we do require people to follow those if possible. So there's a lot we can do, and it's an area that will be more of a focus for us. I think we've started something of a renewed effort to make sure that everything we do is more accessible. So again, work in progress, but this is a really important one for us. So thank you very much for raising it.
Yeah, I'll just second that, Mohammed. I appreciate it, and also the insights that you're providing. Not that it should be your full-time job, but if there's ever any ideas that you have, please reach out to us. If there's ways that we can be working harder on this, we know that there's a lot of gaps and we can be better, and we would definitely take those insights.
Thank you very much. And just to reflect what was just said in the chat, accessibility requires constant attention. And I think the whole board would certainly agree with that. We are now at the point in the agenda where we need to move back to a closed session because the next point is discussing revenue diversification. So let me thank everybody who's joined us so far, and we will return at the end of that for any other business and the adjournment. See you then. Thanks everybody for joining us for the closing session of the ISOC Annual General Meeting for 2021. At this point, I ask the trustees if there's any other business for the meeting. Hearing none, thank you very much. We're adjourned for the Annual General Meeting for the year. As a reminder, we will join the foundation meeting in 5 minutes. Thank you.